Okie dokie. Well, welcome to our guests and to all of our participants out there. It looks like we have about 69 people that have logged on. And today we have a great opportunity to hear from our elected officials. We have 4 of our counselors here today, and we're going to have a panel discussion. And just to let you know that the questions, I have some prepared questions, and they were written by the public policy team. And our members are Leslie Kaufman, Lisa Werner, Kathy Ledford, who is new, so is Lisa new to public policy, Kathy Brandon, Catherine Lutz, our president, and Mary Renard. Before I start here, can you, Catherine, can you see if Mary is registered, has logged on? Because she is going to be monitoring the chat room. If we have time, we will ask some questions from the audience. So we've got plenty of time. I think we'll be able to get to a couple of questions, but we have lots to get to this morning. So before I start those questions, I'm going to read a short bio of each of the counselors. And we have here today Gina DuQuenne. And I'm just going to read these off of I got this information off of the Ashland City website. Each of the counselors, all 6 of them, plus the mayor, have bios on there. So if you're looking to get some background information on your elected officials, feel free to do that. So Councilor DuQuenne moved to Ashland in 2006, where she worked in the hospitality industry for 14 years. She is the founder of the Southern Oregon Pride Festival and active on many nonprofit boards. I actually worked with Gina DuQuenne on the Human Services and Housing Commission for many years. And Gina is still the liaison to that commission. So Councilor DuQuenne was elected in 2020. So she's only been on the council for a little over a year. She's currently serving as a member of the Citizens Budget Committee. And I'll note that all of the counselors are members of that budget committee. And she's also, as I said, liaison to the Housing and Human Services Commission and the newly created Social Equity and Racial Justice Commission. So I believe that that is our newest commission. Tonya Graham, Councilor Graham, has been here 20 years. I've been here 20 years. So she has some history with our community. She spent her professional life working to address ecological and climate challenges. Councilor Graham is currently the executive director of Geo Institute, where much of her work focuses on helping communities build climate resilience. Councilor Graham was elected to the council in 2018 and ran for mayor in 2020. She has served on the Rogue Valley Transportation District and other nonprofit organizations. She currently serves as council liaison to the Conservation and Climate Outreach Commission, Wildlife Safety Commission, this is a mouthful, Economic Development, Cultural Tourism, Sustainability Ad Hoc Committee, and the Climate Policy Commission, and as all counselors, a member of the Citizens Budget Committee. Paula Hyatt is here today. Councilor Hyatt moved to Ashland in 2016. And prior to moving to Ashland, she worked in the field of investment banking and was accepted into a corporate financial leadership and development program, working as a financial analyst. Later, she worked in the field of specialty pharmacy, finance, and sales. Councilor Hyatt was elected to council in 2020, so she's a brand new counselor. Prior to her election, she was volunteering on the Ashland Citizens Budget Committee and serving as chair. She's currently serving on the Municipal Audit Commission, Planning Commission, that's a very important commission, Transportation Commission, and again, the Citizens Budget Committee. Our last panelist is Steffi Seffinger, and Councilor Seffinger moved here, holy smokes, in the 70s. So she was here when we were all hippies, I guess. That's the reputation that or the history that I've heard about Ashland. So maybe Stefani can give us a few little tidbits on that. And at the time, she was working at the Ashland High School, and then moved to California in '83, and continued working in the educational field. In 2006, she returned to Ashland and to pursue an interest in contemporary art glass. I believe that's the term. She is a founding member of the Watershed Art Group. Councilor Seffinger has held 2 elected offices, so she's got something the others don't have. She was also elected to the Parks and Recreation Commission, which is an elected body, and she served as commissioner and then chair. And she is also a member of AAUW, longtime member. So Councilor Seffinger was elected in 2014, so she has seniority. I think she is the longest serving councilor at this point. She currently serves as liaison to the Forest Lands Commission, Cost Review Ad Hoc Committee, this is another, Community Center and Pioneer Hall Ad Hoc Committee, Economic Development, Cultural Tourism and Sustainability Committee, and last but not least, she is a member of the Citizens Budget Committee. So thanks to all of you ladies for joining us today. And let's get started. Okay. So let's see, where are my questions? First question, many very complicated topics come before the City Council. How do you educate yourself and get ready for each council meeting? And I'm going to try to rotate our councilors' responses. So I'm going to start out with Councilor DuQuenne.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Regina. It's great to see you again, and I just want to thank AAUW for including me and having us here. So thank you so much. I'm more than happy to answer that question. That's a good one, because for me, in preparation for each meeting, I rely heavily on the look ahead, because the look ahead allows me to look ahead and better prepare myself and get ahead of things if I can. I also appreciate the work that the staff does on the packet. It is, I believe they do good research and put together a great packet for us before each meeting. And I also rely heavily on some of the commissioners, because the commissions do great work. They do a lot of vetting. I appreciate the things that they do, and they are a wealth of knowledge. So when different issues come up, I will give a couple of the commissioners a call. And there's times also when I have reached out to staff for direct information. And I do my best to read up and make sure that I'm abreast of things. And most importantly for me is I like to keep a pulse on the people, because I want to know what our constituents are thinking and how I can better be of service. So that's my prep, and that's how I do it.
Thank you. Councilor Graham.
Gina, and it's great to be here with all of you this morning, so thank you for the invitation. Mine is very similar to what Councilor DuQuenne has indicated. I try to get my questions asked ahead of time of staff so that they have time to prepare them ahead of the meeting, and often they'll incorporate those questions into their presentation, which I think helps the community understand, particularly if there's a question that has been asked of us by email. I try to, make sure that we're going to get that answer somewhere in that presentation. And then I put together every 2 weeks an e-news for the city, and so that I can share what's happening. And that actually is a really great way for me to stay up to date on all of the different things that are happening. So I pull information from the city's website and Facebook page and that sort of thing. And that helps me stay up to date with what's happening.
So Tonya, question. I watch a lot of city council meetings. So are you limited to questions that can be asked prior to the deliberation starting? How does that work?
Yes, it's one of the Roberts rules that I think is sometimes a little tricky because there's a time of question and answer, and then there's a time when the motion is made. And after that, you're in deliberations, which there's a firewall of sorts up between being able to ask questions of staff. The difficulty of that, of course, is that sometimes those questions don't occur to me or to other counselors until we're in deliberations. And so sometimes there's there are exceptions made so that we can get our questions answered. But we try to get them asked before we go into the formal deliberation space.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Hyatt, would you like to answer that question?
Absolutely. And thank you to the AAUW for the invitation today. The work this group does is extraordinary. And as the daughter of two educators myself, I love hearing about the scholarship work. And I have to admit, those hats were fabulous. So wish everybody well on the upscale sale. For me, the routine of getting ready is much the same, but sometimes I feel I have to start very early. So I will seek out training from organizations like the LOC, and also DLCB and other state level entities that provide background on topics that come before council with great regularity. Oftentimes too, we have things, for instance, like the Hostler Dam. I am absolutely not well versed in the way dams work. And as a result, I will seek out research and information or go look at the FERC website and try to pull from that as well, just to round things out. Because a lot of times as a counselor, you're working from a position of being more like a generalist. And to try to get into those details, you absolutely have to rely on the experts. Clearly, it's also vital to reach out to, to reach out to the community to hear what their thoughts are, get their input on the issues or the course of action that may be being considered. And then clearly our staff. Our staff are the experts in those individual topics. They have been very helpful in answering a variety of questions, and they are always incredibly responsive. I always come away learning from them. And finally, I would say to our commissions, I noticed Lisa Werner is on the policy team for AAUW, and she's also one of our planning commissioners. And I always come away from the planning commission having learned something. It is an incredible group of very talented, brilliant people, really, because land use planning is not easy and they know it well. They do the work well. And as a result, it helps me do better when it's my turn to do my work. Also, I noticed Lisa mentioned what is the look ahead. The look ahead is a calendarized Excel spreadsheet, essentially, that tells us what topics are going to be coming forward to the group and on what date. Will it be a council study session? Will it be at a business meeting? And typically it runs down the primary elements of each business meeting and each study session. They do say that they can move, and they do move, but it absolutely helps us look forward and be prepared for the meetings when they come up.
Well, I've got a question. So some people may not know what a study session is. And that is a meeting that is the night before every city council meeting. And I have participated in, not participated, but I have attended quite a few of those. Could you explain that to our audience? What is the purpose? You mentioned the look ahead. What is the purpose of a study session?
The study session is not a meeting where we deliberate and typically provide formal direction to staff or vote on anything like an ordinance or a resolution or a contract. It is a lot of what the title implies. It is an opportunity for council to learn on issues that will be coming forward for very specific votes and direction. There will be times where an item comes up and staff needs to do that next step of work. And they're like, would you like option A, B, and C? We can discuss that and give direction to help staff hone in on where we're heading on a certain item. But by and large, it's intended for counselors to get a look at the information, to ask questions in a conversational way. It allows for a little bit more dialogue that can't always be present in a business meeting. Again, as Councilor Graham mentioned, because of the way Robert's rules work and the methodologies and processes we have to follow in that public forum.
And is the public, can they attend? Can they speak?
Absolutely. They can attend now via Zoom. How I wish we were in person. And I have a feeling the ladies here would agree with me. It really helps when you can sit across the table from folks. But right now you absolutely can view via Zoom, via RVTV. If you would like to provide public testimony, there is a conduit for that as well. And if you have questions on that, you can always reach out to our city recorder, Melissa Hudula, and she will be happy to tell you how and set you up.
Thank you. Okay, on our first question, our last Councilor Seffinger.
Thanks. Thanks to everyone. And it's nice to see familiar faces out there. What I would say is that I prepare similarly to a lot of what the other ladies have said. I have background because I've been here a while, and some of the issues come up time and again with sometimes new information or sometimes a different value on what to do with regard to that. I like to talk to people, and I have a variety of people I'd like to talk to, my neighbors. I have a young friend that has a different interest in, I try to just talk to different people that are not just the people that always I hear from on social media. So I try to get a sense of what people that are everyday people think. In terms of preparing, as well as reading the materials and the look ahead and listening to the study sessions and the staff, I like to do my own research. If something comes up, I like to see what other cities are doing. I also like to talk to Pam Marsh because she's become a good friend. And if I want to understand something from the point of view of where the state is at, I like talking with her.
She's a good resource for all of us. Yes, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the second question. I'm going to have to ask people to shorten their answers. We're already up against 11 o'clock, so I'm going to have to keep you on track a little bit here. So question 2, the lack of rental housing in the city is not a new problem, but it is getting worse. What steps has the city council taken to increase the city rental housing inventory? What specific programs or policies would you recommend to address this issue? So let's start with Councilor Graham.
Thank you. So there's a number of things that the city has done over time. We have the Affordable Housing Fund that was protected in the general fund in the last budget cycle. We've asked staff to bring forward our request for proposals to put very small, modest housing above the Hargadine parking structure. One of the things we have to deal with is the fact that land cost is a big part of what's driving the inability to build rental housing. So being able to build above city-owned property like the Hargadine garage is one of the ways of dealing with the land cost issue. We've also passed vertical incentives over the transit triangle overlay so that developers could go higher and have more floors there. And we've clarified the annexation requirements for bringing land into the city. A big part of what we have to look at is just that the city doesn't build housing. We create an environment in which that housing can be built. But rental housing in Ashland doesn't pencil at anything two bedrooms or above for the regular market. And so if we want family housing, new rental family housing, we have to line up those incentives, and we need to get partners in the community. We really need a community land trust that is doing permanent land acquisition. And then the city would be able to work with them.
Thank you. Councilor Graham, Councilor Hyatt.
In addition to the individual points that Councilor Graham pointed out, I do want to highlight our housing needs assessment that we passed back in the spring. That was the result of House Bill 2001. Our Planning Commission was integrally involved in that work. That plan was accepted, and now we have our grant funding necessary to do the follow-on work, which is the housing strategy. And that will also be looking at these needs and will be integral to that. The ultimate solution will have to be a blend. And we have seen some forward progress on that, specifically around the need for middle housing. Back in June, we passed a duplex ordinance that allows any residential zoned area to build duplexes, even in single family zoned areas. And again, that was also a follow-on from House Bill 2001. And it is one small piece of that puzzle. Clarifying our annexation ordinances, absolutely also another piece of that. And looking forward to it, how we might use residential overlay in commercial zones is another exploratory area where we may see some movement. No one piece is going to fix everything. It's absolutely a blended solution. Those are some of the elements in addition to the specific examples Councilor Graham kindly provided.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Seffinger.
Well, I'll try to say some things that previous counselors have not said. The land trust and buying more property, first right of refusal when buildings are being sold, or some of the things that other cities are doing successfully.
Can I interrupt there? What does the first right of refusal mean? Who is that?
The first right of refusal means if a property is being sold in some cities or with some renters as well, they have the first right to buy the property.
Okay.
So that's I don't know how often that's being used right now, but that's something I've read about that's a useful thing in the future. One of the things that affects rental housing is the lack of properties for people to buy because those renters can't move to housing. So that's part of the problem, is getting more affordable housing that people can live in. I think that what we've done with auxiliary units, with changing and maybe simplifying some of our planning decisions are things that are important to look at. I talked with Pam Marsh about the city having rental limits to housing, pricing limits and increases. And she said that's not something the cities can do, but the city does do that. So that is something the state is doing. In terms of other things that I just think about pragmatically are helping people with down payments, helping people with, which we do with utility costs, things that can help them remain in their homes or rentals, as well as what the city can do in a formal way. Those are some of the ideas I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor DuQuenne.
Thank you, Regina. And to echo what all my colleagues have mentioned, ditto that. And something that Councilor Graham brought up was the affordability. Recently in front of council, annexation came up. I was happy to see that and that moving forward. Also, I was happy that Eco Northwest, we have an Eco Northwest Ashland housing strategy that we have used or will be using. And I believe that this is a very important tool. But going back to affordability, Ashland is 34% high. Our city is 34% higher than any other municipality in Jackson County when it comes time to fees, permits, SDCs. We need to be more flexible. We need to be willing to work with and collaborate with these developers. Recently, The city does not build buildings and housing. However, there was a collaboration with Southern Oregon Jackson County Housing Authority and the city, and Snowberry too was formed. 100% affordable housing, 1-2 bedrooms, wonderful opportunity. And then when I look at the flip side and I think about the transit triangle that's been sitting in the planning commission since 2018, in the planning department since 2018, and we haven't had any movement. There was the normal project. I have no idea what happened with that. And then when I think about, I know a developer whose project has been sitting in the planning department for 8 years. So we have got to begin to be more flexible and more willing to collaborate and work with these developers and builders, because it's housing first.
Thank you. Let's move on to question 3. Climatologists are predicting ongoing severe drought in Southern Oregon. What is the City Council doing to ensure that the city has sufficient water supply in this coming year? And let's start with Councilor Hyatt.
Thank you, Regina. Prior councils have been working to provide redundancy within our water sources and our water rights. And as many in this group likely know, we get our water from Reeder Reservoir, which is fed by the 2 forks of Ashland Creek. And we also have water rights with GID, granted not available to all residents, but it is one of our water sources. And finally, TAP. Those 3 are the 3 primary sources that come into Ashland to supply our city with water. Our Public Works Department has recently brought online a dashboard that you can see, and I'm going to read this to make sure I get it right. It's at gis.ashland.or.us/water usage. And our Public Works staff has put together this dashboard so you can go online and you can see where our city is at and how full the Reeder Reservoir is and what our drawdown curves look like. And these tools are key. And these are, in answer to the question, one of the things that we are doing to make sure we are monitoring the water levels that we have, what water rights we need to work with, if we need to leverage TAP, and the coordinated effort of bringing all of those 3 sources together to adequately meet the need.
Thank you. Councilor Seffinger.
Let me think here. Having listened to Paula's comments, those would be a lot of the things I would say, but things that I would say that are outside of that would include conservation of water, the use of gray water, the use of programs like the city will give to residents low shower heads, help them with programs like removing grass and having more water resilient plants. There's a lot of things that people can do on their own that works towards saving our water, which is being water wise. And there are programs that North Mountain Park had on how to store water, how to use water and purify water for different uses. So I think those are really important. The watershed is important because it's where we get our water, and we use it for lots of things. We use it for trails, we use it for bikes, for hikers. And so one of the important things to do is to make sure that we're not causing erosion, that we're keeping the watershed safe. And I also believe it's important to have our watershed look at the needs of the creeks down below us and look at the needs that wildlife has for the water, such as the salmon and how it impacts their ability to survive. I kind of like to look at what everybody, everything, trees, animals, the whole population needs, because we're all related and we're all important.
Thank you. Councillor DuQuenne.
Thank you. Something that I did want to mention is that Councillor Seffinger said what the people have done. And the people of Ashland have definitely done their share. I do remember in September 2020, the city of Ashland had a mandatory water curtailment. And the residents of Ashland and the businesses of Ashland saved 15% of water usage in that mandatory time. So I applaud the residents of Ashland. And then when I look at the water storage, I think about what came in front of council not so long ago was the purchase of a new water treatment plant. So this would be a $40 million purchase of a water treatment plant that has 25 years of life left on it. Rather than to build a new water treatment plant, I would say, why don't we take a portion of that money and have water conservation? I heard
We're getting into deliberation now, and we're not supposed to be talking about issues that are currently under deliberation or under consideration. So because there are four of us here, so going into specific with it probably is something because of the quorum. Thanks.
Quorum. You're right, a quorum.
Yes, I'll interrupt here because we got the new city attorney pointed this out, and Stefani forwarded that to me, that it is an issue of deliberation of something that still has to come before the council. So I asked the councilors to jump in on this, and thank you, Stefani, for doing that.
Yes, thank you, thank you. That was just an issue a suggestion of mine that I thought we could go in that direction. Councilor Seffinger is right. I will complete my portion of it because I do not want to break any rules. So I'll end with that.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Graham.
I would only add a couple of things. We know that this water situation and the drought situation is exacerbated by climate change. So these are the impacts of the work or the lack of work that has been done on climate over the last several decades, and they are going to get worse. Fortunately, we do have a three-tier system with a lot of redundancy in it. The council has also recently decided not to move forward with a potential proposal to tie into the Medford water treatment facility for our wastewater. And that means that we'll be able to continue to control that treated wastewater, which in the future could end up being particularly useful. One of the things where we have to be careful is that in conserving water, we also need to make sure that we're protecting ourselves from fire risk in the summer. So that's really when our water problems become an issue, is in the summer. That's also when it's the hottest and the driest, and the most likely that we'll have a problem with wildfire. So there is a balance in there. And I'm hopeful that in this new year, in 2023, we'll be updating our water conservation strategy. And my hope is that we can integrate that with what we know we need to do in terms of maintaining urban vegetation. So really helping residents know when to water trees, how to cut back inside the home, but not risk increasing our fire danger at the same time.
Thank you. And I'll just mention, I know that I believe it was Councillor, I don't know which councillor it was, mentioned a lot of the incentives that our city has, and they are very good about incentives. But it's kind of a carrot and a stick, because we have a tiered water rates in the summer, we have special rates during the summer. And you mentioned that we still need to be able to water our urban plants because of the danger of fire. So it's kind of a catch-22 for people that are paying those utility bills, because it can be a shock. It can really be a shock. So, okay, let's go on to question 4. Communities across the country are experimenting with different styles of public meetings and that are more participatory and collaborative. What are your thoughts about a more interactive exchange during council meetings or other public meetings? How will the council better understand what are the community's priorities as you make hard budgetary decisions? And we're going to start with Councilor Seffinger.
One of the things that we are doing is doing a survey that will be sent out to all citizens that receive the utility billing, as well as encouraging other groups to let the public know about what we're doing, like AAUW. The purpose of that will be to see what the priorities of our citizens are. We know we're in a budget crisis, and we need to make budget cuts or increase revenue. And I'm sure that everybody is concerned about the increasing revenue part. But what we need to realize is that there are essential services that cities have to supply: fire, police, roads. And then there are also value services that we add to what we want to do for our city, that property taxes and general fund money do not necessarily cover. We have grants that we give to groups we've for many years had out of the general fund money that we give to community groups as kind of startup money for projects. So we have to look at all of that and see what of those things are most important to us. Are the police most important? Do we look at what the staffing recommendations are? Do we want to run our own ambulance service or not? Do we want to, what about parks? Should parks be able to be a special district or have a levy to support parks? We want to know the answers to those questions, so when the budget comes, we know, well, these are the things that our citizens feel are the most important to their well-being.
Thank you. Councilor DuQuenne?
Question number 4 about public meetings.
Communication with the citizenry.
Something that for me, I believe that right now we're all at the mercy of this pandemic. And this is a public health issue. And I respect everyone's health. I want everyone to be healthy. So because of that, here we are. I look forward to spring and summer coming so that we can have a more face-to-face, one-on-one time with our constituents and use our open spaces that we have here in Ashland, that hopefully we will be able to meet in our open spaces, mask, social distance, and be able to get feedback from our constituents, to allow ourselves to have a town hall in an open space where people can come and say whatever's on their mind, the topic of the day, the issues of the day. I believe it's important to have as much one-on-one as we possibly can. A survey is going to go out, but how far does it go out and what type of response will we get back? I, for one, am looking forward to spring and summer and the ability to get into open spaces and socially distance, mask up, have a conversation, and find solutions. Thank you.
I think we're all looking forward to that. Okay, Councillor Graham.
Sure. I would add just a couple of things to what's already been said. We did a listening session in early 2019 that I thought was a really interesting and great
tell us
way.
what that is. Can you explain what a listening session is?
Sure. We were coming into the budget cycle, and so we wanted to have a listening session with the community to find out what budget issues were on their mind. And we were in Carpenter Hall downtown, and each counselor sat with a staff member, and citizens came up 4 at a time. So we were actually sitting at a table with a group of citizens, as opposed to people having to sit in front of the microphone and talk to the void. We were having real conversations, and we could have back and forth conversations, and the staff member took notes so that we didn't have to be scribbling at the same time. And that was great, because not only did we hear what they had to say, but they heard each other. And so it was a broader conversation. So I think more of those. We also had a really great town hall around the city hall repair question. And I thought that was a really great way. People came into chambers, but we integrated. We didn't have them stuck on the other side of the dais. Those two things I think we need to do absolutely more of. And also, we put together a citizen panel for the city manager hiring process, where we had groups of citizens join with some of our local partners, organizational partners. But we drew names out of a hat from people who put in their name and said they wanted to be part of that. And I think that's another way that we can get people more directly involved, and we can get a better sense of what the community thinks about particular issues.
Thank you. Does anybody have an idea when the survey is going to go out?
It should be this summer.
Summer, okay. All right, Councillor Hyatt.
I would just add a few small things. My colleagues have absolutely covered the topic very thoroughly, but I would say with regard to the communication amongst our various commissions, we see some commissions that absolutely feel the need to be back in person in order to be able to run the meetings in a way that's efficient, effective, and brings in the dialogue from the public. The Planning Commission specifically has provided feedback wanting that. But I also have seen where other commissions of ours are well served by being in a more electronic format, where it better supports their quorum, and it actually has increased participation for them. So being able to reach out to our community and hear our community members is not a one-size-fits-all type of a solution. We have many folks that, believe it or not, Zoom has been a silver lining for them, and it has allowed and enabled their participation. And then clearly we have other elements where being in person is absolutely preferable. And I think being able to look at each on its own individual merits and assess how we can best connect, communicate with our community members and our constituents is an important part of that process. I am looking forward to the survey myself, because as an elected public servant, I feel that in and of itself is an invitation to continue dialogue. And that survey, I'm looking forward to working with members of this group on a subcommittee of council to develop that, so that we can hear from folks and understand their priorities and continue that dialogue on as broad a scale as possible, something that's very, very challenging to do. So please, when that survey does come out, encourage your friends, your family, respond. We want to hear your voice. And it's important that we know what your priorities are.
So is the city working with anybody to develop this survey?
Absolutely. We will be engaging with SOU and their survey department, and we will work with them. And also we have agreed to put together a proposal with a marketing entity that will help us get the information out to the community. This is a case where we will provide the survey, but we will also use web links and various resources to help provide even more detailed information, so that folks can read the questions we ask, but also like the brilliance of our voter pamphlet. You get your ballot, and your ballots, do you want A or do you want B? And then you go to your voter pamphlet and you're able to size up the measure, what means yes, what means no. We want to understand, we want to provide information so that it's understandable what the responses mean when you do respond, and provide resources so that you can fully understand the totality of the issue. One other thing I would want to stress on that is that the survey is intended to be general fund focused, and that is specifically related to things like public safety, fire, police, our community development department, and also our parks. Those will be the primary elements associated with the survey itself, because it is the general fund right now that presents the biggest challenge.
Thank you. Okay, let's go on to, we're moving along, question 5. This is specifically for our 2 new counselors, Counselor DuQuenne and Counselor Hyatt. This is your first year on the City Council. So has this first year been what you expected? If not, how were you surprised? And what's been the most frustrating? And what's been the most rewarding? So let's start with Counselor Hyatt.
This year has been very interesting, especially since in my mind's eye, when I started running, I thought that we would be in person, although that sounds like I'm answering the prior question. So that part has looked a little different than I expected. I would also say that, I came in with the expectation of, government moves a little slower than the business world. I expected that, but I have to admit, it still came up as a bigger challenge than even I had originally thought. Things do move a little more slowly. So perfect case in point would be requests we made of our planning department back in March for research and study are just coming forward, just coming back around to council now. And that's not anything against the folks that are doing the work. I've been learning just how much goes into that work, the study, the coordination with other entities that sometimes we're not aware of. And as a result, things that you think you should be able to move along within a 60-day timeframe actually take considerably longer, so that all elements are discussed and that all entities are brought in appropriately. So that has been one of the more unexpected elements, but it has also been incredibly rewarding in that 2 specific examples. Being the liaison to the Planning Commission, the work that body has done and the work that has come forward to council as a result is supportive of one of the key values of this community, and that is housing. And they have worked, again, the duplex ordinance changes. We have accepted the housing needs assessment. We've launched the housing strategy. We have amended our annexation rules. There is a lot of work, and now they're looking at commercial zones as well. All of this work is policy work that supports that key value of housing. And how can we get the middle housing? How can we look for more affordable housing? How can we help that rental market? So seeing the efforts right from the staff and committee level come through to council and be acted and moved forward, that is absolutely rewarding. Then on more of an elected official and also one who identifies as a woman, I would say my work with the LOC has been incredibly rewarding.
And what's the LOC?
Oh, I apologize. Thank you, Regina. League of Oregon Cities. So the League of Oregon Cities has recently recognized the Women's Caucus, and I was able to testify and have input into the recognition of that caucus. And it's really an incredible body of women, both elected, prior elected, folks that may serve on commissions are also welcome. And it is a great touch point. It provides wonderful tools in education and mentorship. And, as AAUW does so well, it empowers women to serve. It helps when they win, because women win these roles. And when they do, they have questions. What do we do next? Where do we go from here? Where can we find support? And that caucus is absolutely a place for that. And I am very proud of that. And clearly all the women here on council and in other constituencies across the state are all welcome.
Thank you. Councilor DuQuenne.
Thank you, Regina. Being an elected official is an honor and it's a challenge, and I'm up for it. I have to echo what Councilor Hyatt said. League of Oregon Cities is a wealth of knowledge. And being newly elected, this being my freshman year, League of Oregon Cities put together a meeting for new council members and a training for new council members. And I looked through it and I saw Paula's name and I was like, yes. So I wasn't here by myself. And it was, for me, I thought it was great. Paula, you and I kind of talked afterwards, and then it was like, I don't know, should we talk? Is this a quorum? Oh my God. Anyway, so League of Oregon Cities, I cannot say enough about. They are a wealth of information. And I too am part of the People of Color Caucus for LOC, and so grateful to be a part of that. But being on council, this being my first year, it says, was it what I expected? I love your questions, Regina. Was it what I expected? Yes, and more. And then it says, have I been surprised? And what surprised me most? I am continuously surprised, continue to be surprised. And what has been my biggest frustration, part of what Councilor Hyatt said, as slow as it takes, I'm like, oh my God, come on. So that was a little frustrating, but for me, being in my freshman year, the budget process, during the budget process, when we got our budget, I was excited to just jump into it, and I highlighted and wrote on it. I was ready to go, and it was not what I thought it was going to be at all. Not only was it slow and drudging, but I was under the impression that we were going to sharpen our pencils and roll up our sleeves and collaborate and have robust conversation and move towards solution. And I didn't feel that was really in the direction that we were going in, and I didn't feel accomplished, or it wasn't at all what I thought it was going to be. So I look forward to this next biennium coming up, and I'm grateful that I can be a part of it, and that it we'll work through this through another set of lens, and I really look forward to that. My most rewarding part, I must say, is passing the ordinance of the Social Equity and Racial Justice Commission. This commission, I feel, is much needed, overdue, and it's time. I was grateful to see it pass unanimously. The volunteers and the residents on this commission are a wealth of knowledge and a powerhouse, and I just love working with these individuals. We come together. I feel like I ran a marathon at the end of our meetings. It's like, yes, and so many opportunities are there in front of us and ahead of us, and these individuals are just awesome in what they do. So I must say that has been my most rewarding part of so far. And I just look forward to moving forward and growing and sharing and being of service to the people of Ashland. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, our next question is for our other two counselors, Councilor Seffinger and Graham. You've been on the council for multiple years. Actually, Councilor Seffinger is coming up on her 8th year. Have you seen a change in, this is specifically because of our audience, women, have you seen a change in council communications given that there is now a majority of women councilors? So I'll start with Councilor Seffinger.
Not really.
Okay.
I've worked with other women that have been great on council. Jackie Bachman, Tracy Darrow, Pam Marsh have all been women that have been on council that I feel have brought a lot to the council. This year really is different. And I think a lot of that difference has to do with the the pandemic and Zoom, and not being able to create as connected feelings between counselors. And just knowing a little bit more informally what counselors think or want, or what's most important to them. So that's been a difference. The other big difference I think that people really need to recognize is that we're totally understaffed right now. We've had a lot of staff leave. We do not have staff that will be able to answer questions right away. It's a struggle. It's a struggle even to have commissions because of the fact that that uses a lot of time of employees. So, so that's very different in terms of just being able to talk to employees and them having the time to share their feelings and their knowledge on the subject. I certainly will enjoy the times when we can be together and develop, I hope, warmer and more caring relationships.
Thank you. Counselor Graham.
Thank you. I agree. I had strong relationships with the counselors I served with before, and I have strong relationships, I think, with a number of counselors now. What I have seen that's different, I think, really does come back to the multiple emergencies that we have experienced and the difficulty and the disruption. And I think it carries into the council, unfortunately. I think it would be very difficult to overstate the impact of the Alameda fire on people's general sense of well-being in our community. And the same with the pandemic and how we're, up and, back, kind of starting to come back out into the world. And then we get pulled back again. And the strain on our families that this has had, and all of that, I think local government can become a focal point in that fear. And it becomes very easy to play on it, if for lack of a better word, to whip that fear up. And I think some of that comes into our council meetings. In terms of communications between counselors, I think I would agree that we haven't had the chance, because we're not in person, to have that more human conversation. And it's the same problem we see in social media so often, is because there's not a human connection there, the relationship doesn't get built. And I think I'm, for one, really looking forward to when we can get in person, because that changes fundamentally the communication between two people, especially when they disagree. And when you disagree with somebody and you're right in front of them, it changes the way that disagreement plays out. And so while I have seen a significant change in this last year, I credit most of that to just the incredible strain that our community has been under. And I think a lot of that is likely to get to smooth out once we can be in person, and once we can have, as Councillor DuQuenne mentioned, those in-person interactions with community members maybe who don't agree with what we're the position we might take somewhere. For the last year, it's all been electronic, and we know what a failure that type of communication can represent.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on. What key changes have been made to the 2022 fire season preparation plan, given the lessons learned from the Alameda fire? And let's start with Councillor Hyatt.
One of the big ones that I would like to highlight on that is the adoption of R327's building code. And that was something that came through council and was also worked on very intensely by our own fire chief, Chief Sartine. He helped at the state level to develop that and gave input into that, and it came down through us. That R327 goes to the building code, the materials used, what type of roofing is appropriate, what we cannot have, but all of it is intended to increase fire resistance. I stress resistance because there is no such thing as fireproof, as much as we wish there may be. As everyone also knows, or hopefully they also know, is that the evacuation plan was completed. Cards were sent out. Folks were given their zones so they know what they need to do in the event of an evacuation. We continue with the 3 pillars of harden your home, prepare for evacuation, and being smoke wise. Recent developments, hopefully folks have seen the articles on the beginning of the I-5 emergency ramp, which will be under construction for some time, but it is, I think, a really important example of the interagency relationships, specifically between our city staff and Scott Fleury's Public Works Department and ODOT. He has a wonderful connection there. The two speak regularly, and they worked together because this also required a federal approval. So there was a lot that had to happen, and they got it done. So they deserve to be commended for that. We also continue with our free debris drop-off days, are usually 3 scheduled within a year. And we are currently working a FEMA grant that's allowing us to replace shake shingle roofs and other hardening elements across our community. Those were specific, that grant was specifically worked intensely by a former fire employee, Katie Dibble, and I would like to recognize her for her incredible work on behalf of our community. So these are some of the things that we have done, that we continue to do, that we have learned from Almeda, and that we work together between our fire department, our police department, still very integral clearly with evacuation, our administration and the council, and our community. Everyone has a responsibility to know their zone. Everyone needs to take a look at those 3 months ahead, get prepared, harden your home, become smoke wise. We're in it together. And that's one of the big ways that we'll be successful going forward. Unfortunately, fire risk being in an urban wildfire interface is something that we live with. And we're not alone. Clearly, California and many other states do too. For those that might be interested, the Sunday Read on the New York Daily, New York Times Daily, they had a podcast recently. This Isn't the California I Married. And the podcast is very similar to the lives that we live here and what we have been experiencing. So we are not alone in this. So it is going to be a community approach in order for us all to be ready so that we can learn from Almeda, move forward, and take care of each other in the process.
Thank you. Councilor DuQuenne.
Thank you, Regina. I pretty much of what Councilor Hyatt said, I wanted to touch on because these are things that have been put in place that I really appreciate Chief Sartain for all of his work in implementing safer built homes as we build up, to be able to have this in place. So as we build, our homes are more fire wise. Something that I wanted to touch on that Paula didn't, the Councilor Hyatt didn't, is looking back at the Alameda fires and what Chris Chambers has done working on control burns throughout 2020 and 2021, and also putting together the zoning map is so important. Everyone needs to know their zone and be connected to Nexel, because at the end of the day, if and when wildfires do come, it's on us to take care of our families. And knowing your zone and having that be ready, be set, and be ready to go is so important. I believe everyone should go to ashland.org.us/evacuation so that we are educated and we know what to do for our families. And in this time, in this beautiful weather, to get in our cars and find evacuation routes and speak to our families and know if this happens, meet here and we go there. It's so important at the end of the day that we take responsibility also for our families, and that we're all connected to Nexel, and we have that bandwidth to be able to stay connected, know when it's time to go, and be ready to go. So look at the link that I shared. I'll put it in the chat so that everyone can have it to educate ourselves on the best way to take care of ourselves in case of a needed evacuation. I'll put it in the chat right now, if that's okay, Regina.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Graham.
So yes to everything that Councillors Hyatt and Councillor DuQuenne have said. I would just add a couple of things. The city has been working on this for a number of years, and measures in decades actually at this point. And so what we saw with the evacuation plan, that traffic study was already in place and underway before Alameda hit. There were a number of things that were already happening and had been happening for many years in terms of getting information out to people about what they need to be doing. In addition, the city received a $3 million grant from FEMA to help the 1,100 highest risk homes in Ashland. So in the same way that Councillor Hyatt was talking about the new construction requirements, we need to deal with the existing housing stock and help make that more, have less fire risk. And so that FEMA grant will help provide funding directly to landowners to help them do the work that they need to do around their homes. In addition, the Wildfire Safety Commission has created a program with local realtors where where the city trains realtors and inspectors so they can do fire risk assessments of homes that are being sold, because we know that that's when money is often available to make structural changes. That program is going very well. We've trained we have a volunteer corps of inspectors who will come out for free to any home in Ashland and give people an assessment of the things that they should be doing around their house to reduce their fire risk. So that program launched this last year and has been very successful so far. And then we just recently, the council just recently approved the application of a grant so that we could get additional firefighters. What we know is that we are understaffed, as Councillor Seffinger was saying, we're understaffed across the city system at this point, but we have a structural lack of firefighters, and we know that we need to increase the capacity there. So hopefully that grant will be able to help us, not for this fire season, but for the next one.
Thank you. Councillor Seffinger.
I'll go more on a personal level here. I was in the Loma Prieta earthquake, and my house had a lot of damage. And so I experienced what that was like to be in a disaster. Some of my learnings from that were people don't know enough about their neighbors. We have a lot of elderly citizens in our town. You should know them. You should know that they might need some extra help in getting out. They might not drive. And so maybe you might give them a ride. Thinking about other people, also preparing yourself. For example, when I could get into my house, I tried to figure out what was best to take with me. And I realized I couldn't take a lot of things. So now when I'm here, I've taken a lot of screenshots of things and put them in the cloud, of driver's licenses, mortgages, things like that, so that I'm not frantic in the moment about trying to think about things to take. Having a calm persona is really important in an emergency, so you can think of the things you should do with your house, turning off gas or anything that you might want to do to make your house safer. I learned that. I learned that you need to be flexible. I mean, when I think about what happened with the Alameda fire, we did learn that the Department of Transportation and trucks being led onto our streets made it very difficult for us. So we're doing more communication with those around us. We aren't just a city. We're a community that extends further than that. Another big thing for me is the population that's homeless. They're not going to have necessarily the same ability to hear Nixle or to know what's happening with fire danger. So being sure that we have community resources that can help them. One thing is emergency phone. Some communities give emergency phone use to homeless populations so that they have a way of being connected. I think it's really important also to look at what happens with your animals, your pets, your dogs, your cats. There are people that wouldn't leave until they could find their animals. So, so thinking about that is also important. Flexibility is really important in terms of looking at routes as well. The route to my house in Aptos was, the road gave way. So here I look at streets like Sherman, like Gresham, that are essentially one-way streets because there's parking on both sides. I worry about how I would really get out. I look at the road diet. I personally am not an advocate of the road diet. I think it has some problems in terms of being able to get out of town. I know for me, it's harder to get the hospital through town because there's more congestion. So, those are some of the things personally that I found.
Great. All great suggestions. Absolutely. And I know our awareness level has been raised because of the Alameda fire. So we're all thinking about our to-go bags, hopefully. Okay, let's see. I've got one more question. Well, no, I've got a couple of questions here. Okay, this comes back to the topic of hard decisions. Sometimes you may be the lone counselor supporting or opposing a decision. How do you handle being the only no or the only yes vote? So let's start with Counselor DuQuenne.
Thank you, Regina. I have been in that position 2 or 3 times. And something that I was told early on when I was running, and even before being voted into this position, but when I was running, and Jamie McLeod Skinner told me, she said, Gina, at the end of the day, just make sure that you are comfortable with every decision you make. And I thought, she's right. Being in this position, I feel comfortable. I have no problem with it, as long as I know that I have made the best decision for the people of Ashland. When I align myself with the values and the reason why I'm here for the people of Ashland, I feel very comfortable with that. So I am fine with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Graham?
Yes, I've been in that situation as well. And, I think for me, it's about recognizing that the wisdom is in the group. And I may think that we're heading down a path that's not the right path. But I respect my fellow counselors. And I think that it's important that if we make a decision, that even if I disagreed with that decision, that I try to help implement it in the best way possible. Right, that we if that's the path we're going down, then that's the path we're going down. And once the decision is made, it's made. And so, everybody's going to have that at some point. But I don't take it personally, unless there's a reason to, unless it becomes that way. But it hasn't so far.
Thank you. I remember when I was in the private sector, it's disagree and commit. So you get your opinion out, but then you commit. Yeah. Okay, so now let's see, Counselor Hyatt.
Coming into office, one of the onboarding opportunities I had spoke to this piece very specifically. And I think it's one of those times, and the way you just put it is actually beautiful, that you have to realize it's not the individual, it is the body. So when your vote is the only lone vote, absolutely, as long as you have good reason for why you're voting that way and you can support your opinion on that vote, vote it accordingly. But if the body decides to go a different direction, then it is incumbent upon that individual to support the body. And as a result, when I look at each vote, I make sure that I have an understanding of, if I was asked, what is your rationale, that I can absolutely explain my rationale. But when the vote goes, if it goes contrary to my thinking, I support the will of the body. And that was, again, one of the things that in this case, it was the League of Oregon Cities. They spent a lot of time on it, and they wanted to ensure that newly elected officials understood the simple fact that it's not about you. It's about the group and what is best for the community. And they did it very well. And I learned it very well. So each time I take a vote, it is always about what is best for the community, support the will of the body as the whole.
Thank you. Councillor Seffinger?
I would say pretty much the same thing. I feel like you have to have conviction and have done the research and feel that what you're putting forth is genuine to what you feel is best for the community. If the vote doesn't go your way, then supporting what is going forward and seeing if there are any tweaks that you could make in what's going forward that could change your support of it.
Thank you. Okay, we're coming up on our closing time here. I have one more question that relates to our mission here at AAUW. As elected officials, you are excellent role models for women who might aspire to hold public office. How can AAUW work with you to advance a shared mission of advocating for women and girls, getting more civically engaged? And let's start with Councillor DuQuenne.
Thank you, Regina. Well, first off, I really appreciate what AAUW is doing today. Because we need to have our connection and we need to keep each other informed. I would perhaps suggest I don't think we can have enough input in our university, at SOU, at our high schools, the presence of women who are really out there doing it as we all are out there doing it. I feel that we really need to have more of a female presence and energy on all legislative levels when it comes to judges, attorneys, local level, federal level. I feel as if we cannot have enough of our presence and our input there because for too long it's been one-sided. And we need an integrated government so that we can move forward in a healthy democracy. So I applaud AAUW for doing this. And it's for all of us to go out and integrate into our communities and educate these wonderful, amazing young women coming up, and because they stand on our shoulders. And I look forward to being a part of that. Thank you, Regina, and thank you, AAUW.
Thank you. Okay, let's hear from Councillor Hyatt.
Thank you, Regina. The AAUW organization goes right to a lot of the values that I grew up with. I'm the daughter of 2 teachers, high school educator. My mother was elementary, and they always would say to me, yes, you can go do that. That is something that you're capable of. So I had a lot of that support and encouragement. And I think giving that support and encouragement to other women in our community is vital. In Emerge, the program that helped me learn how to run effectively for office, one of the key statistics that is stated is that every woman that runs for office had to be asked at least 7 times. So even with all of the encouragement that I received and all of the knowledge and confidence that I had in myself, I found that statement was actually spot on. And I was asked more than 7 times to run. And I said no initially. And then I was like, maybe I can do this. And then finally, I said a confident yes. And with that confident yes, though it may be my candidacy that came forward, it was a candidacy supported by a team of incredible women, very bright, intelligent women who knew how to run or knew me personally and how to help me. And so I did not achieve this public service role alone. It was very much a team effort. And if folks are looking to get involved, please consider helping a candidate. You don't always have to be the one out front. And we have wonderful organizations locally. Progressive Oregon Women is one of them, putting together teams to help women run, to help women win and succeed once they have won. And that part is huge. AAUW does an excellent job of empowering women. And I absolutely feel that in the context of this question, it would be a great way for public servants to partner with AAUW, to work together on those teams, or to be the one out front and running. And I would also say to never forget that our commissions and our committees in this city are vital. You've heard many of us today say we reach out to members of those commissions as we get ready for our meetings. Volunteering, applying for those roles, do it. Don't sit there and say, well, maybe they won't pick me. Because I had that thought too. When I was here for a very short amount of time, I hadn't been living in Ashland a full year yet. There was an opening on the budget committee and I decided to apply. I didn't think I'd be chosen, but they did. They did appoint me. And here we sit today. So absolutely, if it is something that you think you have drive to do or skill and passion, go for it, apply, because we need our resident involvement. And from that, so much more springs forward. So please, if anybody within AAUW would like to talk more on these, feel free to reach out to me directly. But most importantly, thank you for the work you do within our community and empowering women and in education overall. It is absolutely necessary and vital. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Seffinger.
Well, I think that AAUW has really helped me, interestingly, in terms of a leadership role. One of my first leadership roles was in AAUW, and there were some wonderful role models there that helped me become more confident in my ability in this role. The other thing that I find is I like to do things that are on the ground. I'm kind of an on the ground person. So I've done things like I had a high school student with me when I ran my last campaign who went through we went to probably, 500 or more houses together campaigning. AAUW does work with the high school in terms of, and I've been involved in this before, counseling with students and helping them plan for their futures as counselor volunteers. AAUW gives scholarships to women, and when they do that, the women talk about, there's a celebration, and the women talk about what that means to them. Those kinds of emotional connections, experiences, direct contact, I think are so valuable. Scholarships are great, and AAUW does that, but they also really try also to create a community for the women that are involved. It's no joke. We all are getting older. And the things that we do also for ourselves in the group make us stronger, healthier individuals, help us volunteer more and live more productive lives. So I'm really proud to be a member of AAUW and feel like it is a very unique organization in our city. Thank you all. And thank you, Regina, for having us.
Yes.
Well,
Thank you for the endorsement of the organization. Appreciate that. Okay, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, and I realize we're out of time, so I'll keep this very brief. I think there are two things when you ask about how can we work together. There's the short-term question of upcoming campaigns, and I think Councillor Hyatt spoke very eloquently to that. There's also that longer game of young women. And I came from a background where I didn't come from educated folk in my family. Education is not a big part of our lives. But at various points in my life, I had other people say, I see something in you. And to the extent that AAUW can be that voice in this community to find those young women, to say that the 7 times needing to be asked is because we all know what our acculturation does in terms of women and their confidence. So anything that you all can do in your programming as you work with young women to say, I see something in you, we see something in you. And I don't know what that could look like, but some way to bring young people together to help them understand where power sits in the world and how they can access it, and to give them the confidence that they have something to offer to that is critically important. And it comes back to the social equity side of things and the work that we know we need to do, not only for women, but for all women, you know, who have other situations and other characteristics that they're getting messages about in this larger culture. And so to the point also of our commissions, several of our commissions have student slots, and they often go unfilled because we can't find people, students of, you know, male or female students to fill them. So to the extent that you are in conversations with these young women, let them know. You heard we're liaisons. The 4 of us are liaisons to a lot of commissions, and certainly when we have young women come in, I think that we would be happy to mentor them and help them get their feet under them in their service on a commission.
Thank you. I'm glad we closed with this question. I mean, of course, picked it especially because I feel role models are just crucial for young women, any age women, to see themselves in positions of power and decision making. It's crucial. So I want to thank all of our counselors for joining us today. And I know we didn't get to any questions from the chat room, and there were quite a few there. But if you have a question for a specific counselor, you can go to the Ashland website, and each of the counselors have their email addresses there, and you can submit questions to them, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to answer them. I think that's about it for me. I appreciate everybody's participation, and I want to thank our counselors for their public service. I've been on some commissions, and it can be a challenging job.